What does freedom mean to you? Does it mean the freedom to choose? The freedom to have a family and raise your kids according to your own values? What about living a wild, adventurous life, experimenting with music, relationships, or art? What does freedom really mean? What if freedom meant something that only a few Americans still understood? What if it meant that your choices and your values were set by you, rather than by some politician in a far-off capital? Some people think we're only free to choose to live exactly how they live, by their moral code, or their narrow worldviews. But if liberty means anything, it means that you, and you alone, have the power to exercise your rights to which the laws of nature and nature's God granted you. It's time to put these principles back into action. It's time to restore the American dream, activate in our communities, and take our country back. It's time to wake up, America. Good morning at 7:02. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. Thankful to have you here as a listener and a viewer. Today's going to be, well, a little different. Today's show, we're going to go through a history lesson. We're going to talk about why your favorite president sucked. And yours, and mine. Everybody's favorite president. Everybody's got a top 5, you might say, or at least a top 1, somebody that you really liked. Well, I'm going to pee in your coat today. I'm going to go through one of these. Remember these? If you're watching us live, you can see books. Yes, a book. We're going to go back to the old days. Remember what they smelled like? Books. I'm going to go through a book today. Remember when people used to read books? I think that one of the big problems that we face today is illiteracy. But it's not just that people can't read, because what's the point of being able to read if you don't actually read? What was that old Mark Twain quote where he said that people who don't read have no advantage over people who can't? So today, we're going to go through one of my favorite books to talk about the history of American presidents and why they all sucked. All of them. Well, they all had something bad with them. Obviously, I would have been the only great president. Good morning. Yes, I remembered to push play this morning, Caleb. Thanks so much for joining us over in the live stream. Now, obviously, I'm not going to have time to get through all of these presidents, okay? And this book, which is called Recarving Rushmore, if you'd like to grab a copy of it, you can do that. You can find it on Amazon. That's what the cover looks like over here. There we go. Recarving Rushmore by Ivan Eland, ranking the presidents on peace, prosperity, and liberty. That's the name of the book that we're going to be going through today. But if you have a president that you really want to for me to read and to share information from today, you're going to have to do it as a super chat. Now, this book, again, does not go past George W. Bush. So for those who are like, well, what about, where does Donald Trump rank? I would actually rank Donald Trump in the top 25, in my opinion, right? And based on a PP&L ranking. But if you have a certain president that you would like to have me share information about today, then you can do so. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through the methodology of this. Now, if you are bored by history and by readings from books, today is not the show for you. But we are going to be talking about some rather dry material, but which I find fascinating. And let's start with the introduction here. When historians, political scientists, law professors, journalists, and pundits rate the performance of presidents, so the typical type of people who would say, oh, the greatest presidents in American history, they'll say Abraham Lincoln was the greatest president in American history. They're usually judged based on personal charisma, JFK, intellect, communication skills, or their management style. Their chances of being deemed a great president are significantly improved if they serve during times of war and other crises. Bland men in boring times rarely achieve much note. Remember that. It's going to come in handy. Yes. But Are those the best ways to rank presidents based on how charismatic they are, based on a war that they were involved in? I would say that absolutely no. The bias in evaluating presidents' performances are based on things like what they consider effectiveness, how effective a president was at getting their agenda passed, or how charismatic they were, right? There's a charisma bias. One of the reasons that people love John F. Kennedy was because of the flowery words that you can go and read on his tomb. When you go to the Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C., you can read John F. Kennedy's quotes and be so inspired. We go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard, right? These things inspire people, but they're not really a great way to judge a president, are they? Based on their flowery words. If you ranked someone based on their flowery words, you could probably find a lot of beautiful poetry in the words of George Soros, for example. But I highly doubt that the people listening and watching right now would say, "Oh yes, I'm a big, great fan of George Soros," for example. You can text the show today at 573-319-1586. And Camellia is asking, so is this big brain day? Yes, it is. And JFK was not a big brain. In fact, his brain got significantly smaller towards the end of his life. Well, yes. Also, Oswald did it by himself in the book Depository, and we will talk a little bit about that yesterday. I did enjoy teasing my conspiracy theorist friend yesterday. I lost like 200 followers on Instagram for riling them up and calling them conspiratards, which was quite hilarious. Another bias that historians and pundits and journalists will use when they are ranking presidents as great is what they call a service during a crisis bias. Right, so if a president served during a crisis like FDR or George Washington, for example, then that will usually be a bias that journalists and pundits and typical lay people will use to say, okay, president of the United States, they were a great president because of their service during a crisis. Activism is another bias that journalists and pundits and historians will rank presidents on a great level of how activist a president they were. Were they very active? Did they do a lot as president of the United States? But is that really a good basis for what makes a great president? They did a lot of things. Is that what makes a great president, that they did a lot of things? I would venture no, because this book ranks presidents based on their policies that led to peace, prosperity, and liberty. We call this a PP&L ranking based on how their policies actually brought about peace, prosperity, and liberty. Aaron Kreschel says, if FDR is your hero, you don't know much about him. Amen, Aaron Kreschel. Mind blown, literally, says Chris Morrill. Very funny, very funny. All right, this is my kind of show, says Tyler Nelson. Hell yes. One more time, title and author, please, says our friend EBC over on Twitch. Good morning, EBC. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. If you'd like to get really active with the chat, make sure that you join us over at youtube.com/AP4Liberty, but you're free to watch us wherever you like. This is from a book called Recarving Rushmore. This is the dust jacket. Ranking the Presidents on Peace, Prosperity, and Liberty by Ivan Eland, Eland. Recarving Rushmore. So that's what we're using. And we're ranking the presidents not on how most historians rank presidents based on how charismatic they were. Did they serve during a crisis? Did they do a lot of things? We're ranking presidents today based on policies that led to peace, prosperity, and liberty. And boy, the first president right out of the gate that is going to offend especially a lot of people. But you know what? We might as well get your butts hurt as much as quickly as possible. Let's get your butt hurt out of the way and talk about why Thomas Jefferson sucked. Why Thomas Jefferson was a bad president. As a matter of fact, on the ranking of peace, prosperity, and liberty, out of all of the presidents on this list, of which we have, I believe, 40, we've gotten up to 43. The one of the, let's see, 26 is Thomas Jefferson in terms of peace, prosperity, and liberty. Yeah, I know. He said a lot of beautiful things when he was not president of the United States. He did a lot of great things when he was not president of the United States. But once Thomas Jefferson became president of the United States, he found that with the trappings of power, the responsibilities that he found himself in, and the times that challenged him, he found it was much harder to enforce the kinds of principles that he spoke about in the Declaration of Independence. This one really offended me the first time I read this, by the way. Thomas Jefferson, third president, was the most prominent proponent of limited government in U.S. history. A proponent, yes. He organized what would later become the Democratic Party, first going under the Republican and then the Democratic Republican label, which championed more limited government than the opposing parties, the Whigs, the Federalists, and the latter day Republicans. The Democratic Party was one of Thomas Jefferson's biggest contributions to U.S. society. And I would say, guess what? One of the worst contributions in American history. Thomas Jefferson gave us the filthy, lousy Democrats. But in contrast to his Republican philosophy, when I say small r, I'm Republican, I mean small r here, Jefferson wielded executive power with glee. From the nation's founding until the turn of the 20th century, he was one of the three most powerful executives to sit in the White House in the company of Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln. Not fun. Not good. Not good. Peace. He does get high marks for peace. He did advocate a restrained foreign policy. But in practice, he followed his maxim by avoiding war with Spain and Louisiana. By buying the territory from France, he knew that if France controlled the key port of New Orleans, the United States would be compelled to form an alliance with Britain. And I know that people think that this was a good idea, probably was a good idea, but in regards to the Constitution, he did negotiate the Louisiana Purchase unconstitutionally. Yes, I know. You're saying to yourself, Austin, you live in Missouri, where Lewis and Clark discovered the city of Jefferson, where you are right now. You're in Thomas Jefferson's literal city named after him, Austin, right now, while you're speaking to us live. How dare you demean him in his city? Okay, I liked Thomas Jefferson before he was president and after he was president, but as president, he was not so great. And we do have to admit that the Louisiana Purchase, if it was to be purchased, should have been done through Congress, right? But he was in a bit of a hurry, and Napoleon was fighting a war in France. And he even admitted about the Louisiana Purchase that it stretched the Constitution until it cracked. Jefferson actually didn't buy Louisiana. Actually, he bought France's claim to the territory because if you remember, there were people who lived in the Louisiana territory that were not French. As a matter of fact, a lot of people lived there. So they didn't get any money from the Louisiana Purchase. Remember those people? Yeah? Oh, okay. All right. So continuing on here, in terms of prosperity, on the prosperity ranking, Thomas Jefferson as president kind of sucked. He drastically curtailed economic liberties. Undoubtedly, the most atrocious action of the Jefferson presidency was the draconian embargo he placed on U.S. international commerce and coastal U.S. trade in response to British and French violations of U.S. neutrality in the Napoleonic Wars. Now, British warships were stopping U.S. merchant ships. They were inspecting and seizing cargo and searching them for British deserters and pressing them back into service in the Royal Navy. Sometimes Americans were actually being seized because of shortages of British naval manpower. But the United States was partially at fault by making it easy for deserting British sailors to get U.S. citizenship papers and enlist on American ships. Continuing on here, Jefferson felt pressure to do something about these affronts to the United States, but he was trying, of course, to avoid a war with Britain. So he chose to end all foreign U.S. trade in late 1807. Very Trumpian of him. Jefferson's embargo ultimately failed to change British policy. It caused pressure for even more drastic action, and it actually eventually led to war by the unprepared United States against the British Empire in 1812 during the subsequent Madison administration. Now, Chris Wallace, remember Chris Wallace used to work for Fox News, now works for CNN, big failed reporter there, claims that Jefferson's embargo bought time for the United States to embargo the military to defend against British attacks, but the United States was still militarily unready for war that it was the first to declare, and it was a lot poorer and more unprepared for war because of, guess what? The embargo. See, what people don't understand is that when they say something like, we need to cut off trade with China, cutting off trade with China, for example, right now would be a very bad idea, even if you think that ultimately we're going to fight a war with China, because one, it's going to hasten a war with China, and two, it's going to leave us more economically unprepared for war with China. If China wants to send us actual physical goods in return for worthless pieces of paper, that are printed out of the Federal Reserve, you have to understand by the U.S. Treasury and printed by the Federal Reserve. That's a good thing. So this is what people don't understand about international trade. We are giving people near worthless and becoming worth less and less over time. We're giving them pieces of paper, not even pieces of paper anymore. China is sending us valuable goods. We are actually getting physical products for pieces of paper. So no, it's not a good idea for us to cut off trade with China, even if you think China is a belligerent that we are going to eventually have a conflict with, because we're taking their resources. We're giving them pieces of paper. What will they be able to do with those pieces of paper in times of war? What will we be able to do with the smartphones that we get from them in times of war? Think about that. So that was Thomas Jefferson, and I started it off with one of the most painful ones for me. He was not a good president. He kind of sucked as president. He was a great man, great leader. Thanks for the Declaration of Independence. Didn't free his slaves. Had a lot of other problems as well. We've got more presidents to go. Tell us which one was your favorite president. I'll tell you why they sucked when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here today. Today's show is a little bit different. Instead of hitting all the big news items of the day today, we're talking about history, having a little fun during Christmas week. Merry Christmas to you. Happy Hanukkah. Hope you're having a happy holiday season and enjoying some time well-deserved with some family, friends, loved ones, some people near and dear to you. Today, we are going through a book. Remember these things? They smell wonderful. Today's book that we're going through is called Recarving Rushmore by a gentleman by the name of Ivan Eland. And Ivan Eland wrote this book and ranked presidents based on their peace, prosperity, and liberty policies. You see, most people, when they rank presidents based on their charisma or how much of an activist they were as president of the United States, or did they serve during a time of crisis. But I prefer to rank presidents based on how much peace, prosperity, and liberty they brought as presidents of the United States. Now, before I get into this real quickly, very briefly, I want to ask you a favor today. If you haven't done it today, I'm only going to ask you for one thing today as my Christmas present, and it's totally free for you to do. What I would like to ask for you today, if you wouldn't mind, is to sign up for a free informational packet from my friends over at Lear Capital at learaustin.com. That's all I want to ask of you today for my Christmas present from you, is to please go over and visit my friends at Lear Austin, LearAustin.com. Sign up for a free informational packet about their gold and silver packages that they offer over there. It's totally free, no obligation. Just get yourself a free information packet from them and find out more about their services at learaustin.com. That's the only thing that I want from you today, and I'd be certainly grateful. Jeff, good morning, Jeff. Thanks so much for joining us today. Nice to have you here. What about Calvin Coolidge? We'll get to Calvin Coolidge because I definitely love Calvin Coolidge, but yet Calvin Coolidge had some problems, and we're going to talk about what those problems were a little bit later in the show. That I thought it would be nice. Oh, and thank you for subscribing, Jeff, by the way. Welcome to the Freedom Ninja Army. Don't forget, you get some awesome emojis like this one right here that I'm going to type over in the YouTube stream. Type in, I think it's PEW, Bume, and then it doesn't show up on the video screen, unfortunately, for some reason, but you can see it in the YouTube chat there. Sweet little machine guns and all kinds of other ones. Do it with a colon, the word dead, and then colon again, and all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah. All right, let's get into it. Here we go. Theodore Roosevelt, overrated in accomplishments and significance. Whenever you ask, especially Republicans, especially today, the influence of Theodore Roosevelt is strong on the modern Republican Party. Wait, president's not perfect, says Dustin. That's true. They're not perfect. Not even Thomas Jefferson, who I was just ripping on here just a moment ago. But Theodore Roosevelt, definitely one of the most overrated presidents in American history. He actually had a higher ranking, though, than Thomas Jefferson on the basis of peace, prosperity, and liberty. He was ranked number 21 out of presidents, ranked all the way to George W. Bush in this book. 26th president of the United States. Theodore Roosevelt's powerful personality and charisma often lead to an inflated assessment of his presidency. In fact, Roosevelt merely expanded with more gusto and verve the already enlarged presidential powers that McKinley accrued during the Spanish-American War. Roosevelt expanded the president's role in foreign affairs, federal patronage, the mediation of disputes between labor and business, and the busting of trusts. Ah, yes, trusts. The social media trusts. Social media has to be regulated. That's a very Teddy Roosevelt view that many modern Republicans hold. And while there are dozens of pages here about why Teddy Roosevelt sucked, I think the most important and the most pertinent, although they do list things here, for example, they talk about his muscular foreign policy, challenging the Kaiser in Venezuela, expanding the Monroe Doctrine, launching the Great White Fleet, stealing the Panama Canal Zone, instigating other gunboat episodes, whitewashing oppression in the Philippines. I think for those of you who are most interested in presidential history, this is the most pertinent aspect of why Teddy Roosevelt sucked. Here we go. Expanded presidential powers and developed, quote, progressive policies that were harmful to the country. Teddy Roosevelt came into office when the progressive movement was in full force. The progressives wanted to increase government regulation of business. Yeah, I know. Claiming that this would help consumers and workers. Where have we heard that before? In the end, government intervention into the marketplace mainly helped the industrialists who were being regulated. Duh, no kidding.
Emotional damage.
Yes, since Roosevelt's time, public choice theory has done much to debunk the idea that government can act to balance big business. The theory basically says that rich businesses are better organized politically than the average consumer, worker, or taxpayer, and can use government intervention to further increase their wealth by restricting competitors, obtaining government subsidies, or getting preferential tax treatment. Thus, counterintuitively, consumers, workers, and taxpayers are better off with a marketplace unfettered by government involvement. Now, Thomas Jefferson realized this truth when the Republic was young, and before he became president, Alexander Hamilton, his nemesis, believed that government should help business. In American history, Jefferson's conception largely defeated Hamilton's until the 20th century. Now, Roosevelt was a progressive Republican and an advocate of aggressively using government power. For example, Upton Sinclair's novel *The Jungle*, which highlighted unsanitary conditions in Chicago's meatpacking houses, enabled Roosevelt to regulate the U.S. food industry. U.S. meatpackers actually wanted federal meat inspection. They did. And that's because European countries were banning the importation of American meats due to insufficient U.S. government regulation. Also, other large firms and trade associations that were to be regulated, like the Brewers Association and the Wholesale and Retail Grocers Association, were big supporters of Roosevelt's Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. Big business also wanted to create a Department of Commerce and Labor. Wow, big business doesn't like capitalism. No surprise there. And they wanted a Department of Commerce to replace all of the state regulations with uniform national regulations. Roosevelt envisioned a cooperative rather than an adversarial relationship between government and business, and legislation authorized a new Bureau of Corporations. Yeah, Roosevelt named James R. Garfield, the son of the assassinated President James Garfield, to be the chief of the new bureau, but Roosevelt actually directed the office. Garfield proposed to federally license corporations, and it was actually popular with big business because guess what? They thought that it was going to limit state regulations, and it was a great way for businesses to limit competition. Geez, where have we heard all of this before? Yeah. Doesn't that sound familiar to you all, right? Why Teddy Roosevelt sucked? Roosevelt was the first president to endorse an antitrust program, but it was modest and discretionary. His policy for controlling trusts was tolerance, mild regulation, and making public their accounting data. To some extent, to satisfy public pressure, he was creating only the facade of going after the trusts, but he set a bad precedent that would ultimately get the government more actively involved in the economically counterproductive trust-busting business. Instead of increasing competition, which is what they claimed that the antitrust laws were going to do, antitrust laws usually allow politically well-connected companies to break up or keep out large potential competitors from a particular market. Now, Teddy Roosevelt sucked. Boo. Progressive. Who do you think we're going to do next? How about John F. Kennedy and why he was terrible and why it's so annoying to hear so many conservatives and libertarians talk about him like he was good and say things like, JFK wanted to end the Federal Reserve. Well, did JFK actually want to end the Federal Reserve? What do you think? You fools. You tards. You conspiratards. No. He didn't want to end the Federal Reserve. Matter of fact, he kind of liked the Federal Reserve. Yeah. By the end of me talking about why JFK sucked in the next segment, you're going to want to assassinate JFK. We'll be back with more on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America Show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you?
I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupamericashow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Hey, it's Austin. Thanks for watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show. 2022 has been an exciting year for the Petersen household. Steffi and I celebrated our first anniversary, and my new radio program, The Austin Petersen Show, was syndicated in St. Louis just over a month ago. There have been some challenging times, but with the help and support of good friends like you, we've been able to come out even stronger at the end of this year than when we started. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the Cantina crew, especially Camelia Petersen, Tolly Owens, Jamie Marie Pope, Chris Morrill, Matt Unruh, Quest Fanning, Elizabeth Fanning Press, Tina Martin Goodrick, John Rail, Jasper Logan, Kathy Jo Loy, Edie Vogel, Grant Sundberg, Anna DePalm, Doug Hill, Andy Opperman, Lyle and Lori Rosberg, John Petersen, John Mashurik, Ava Lavasco, Leslie Scott Russell, Liberty Liss, Pam Ames, Cecilia Harden, Mary Kramer, and dozens more than I could list here. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and may your days be merry and bright with a Happy New Year.
Hello, I'm George. Thank you for watching the Wake Up America Show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1, you can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself or me mom, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great. Number 2, most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. online. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3. You're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell! This commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Your favorite president sucked. Today's show is a little bit different. We're not talking about the biggest, hottest news items of the day. We're going through American history. That's not your bag, baby. You came to the wrong neighborhood. Yesterday, I found myself in a bit of a kerfuffle online. Oh, I know. Austin, it always seems like you're just getting in trouble. Yesterday, I angered the conspiracy theorists who just simply cannot accept the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald, noted communist who hated America and who hated John F. Kennedy, who was an ardent anti-communist, Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and shot John F. Kennedy from the book depository by himself in Dealey Plaza with a Carcano rifle that he bought for $12. And the bullet that he shot him with, the 3 bullets, they weren't magic. They were just regular bullets. And they weren't totally unscathed either. They were very scathed, as a matter of fact. Yeah, that magic bullet was just an old regular bullet. And I don't understand why people find it so hard to believe. I think it's because they've all been triggered by the Russia-Trump investigation, that if you dare suggest that the KGB, for example, during the Cold War was involved in shenanigans here in the United States, and it's like, no, you're triggered by Russia. It's like, it makes me think that, like, sometimes the Democrats, you know, even though they're mostly tarted, they do sometimes make some good points that, like, there are a lot of Putin apologists on the right. It's possible that the CIA is corrupt and that Oswald also acted alone. 2 things can be true at once. And also that Tucker Carlson was full of shit when he said an anonymous source claims that the CIA was involved. Sorry, but you're an anonymous source. An anonymous source said it was aliens. Oh, well, it's an anonymous source. My anonymous source says you're an anonymous source. The CIA was involved. Sorry, guys. You have to understand that you can't simultaneously hold the opinion that your government is completely incompetent and inept and unable to accomplish even the most basic things and then say, oh, but they managed to pull off this very, very precise, concise conspiracy and then keep it covered up for all these years. Why are they holding back on the documents? Well, that's a great question. It begs the question. Probably because they want to cover their ass from the dereliction of duty because they were supposed to keep him safe that day. I mean, I could go through all of the hours and hours and hours of BS, debunking all of the BS conspiracy theories about why, LBJ didn't shoot him from the grassy knoll himself. But the fact of the matter is that we should talk about the hard facts, which is that your favorite president, John F. Kennedy, sucked. And he didn't he didn't want to end the Federal Reserve. He was a terrible president, objectively. And he was actually one of the worst presidents. He was a bad president in the rankings in regards to PP&L. That is peace, prosperity, and liberty. Yes. Was it a kerfuffle, really, or was it more of a brouhaha? It was a bit of a tomfoolery, says Jeff. Yes, it was. We were having a good time yesterday. I lost like 200 followers over there on news. It is funny how triggered conspiracy theorists are. If you telling a conspiracy theorist that Oswald acted alone from the book depository is like telling a leftist that a man can't get pregnant. You get the exact same reaction. There's a whole lot of oh no, how dare you? How dare you? Anyways, let's talk about why you should have had a Pope-mobile. Exactly, Elizabeth. Thank you. In terms of peace, prosperity, and liberty, out of the 40, excuse me, 44 presidents that we are ranking today, he was 35, one of the worst. John F. Kennedy, one of the worst presidents in American history, if you're ranking them based on peace, prosperity, and liberty. Most people don't rank presidents based on peace, prosperity, and liberty. What do most presidents get ranked with? They mostly get ranked based on their charisma, how activist they were. John F. Kennedy was the first president to benefit from the relatively new medium of television. He was young, charming, and good looking, and he had an attractive wife and kids from a well to do family, making him a charismatic and telegenic celebrity, equaled only by Ronald Reagan. His inaugural address, shaped by adroit speechwriters and coining such phrases as ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, was regarded as one of the most stirring of the 20th century and on par with FDR's first inaugural speech. Now, although JFK actually barely squeaked out an election victory over Richard Nixon, his performances at press conferences caused his popularity to skyrocket about 70% after inauguration. Yet, as Reagan, charismatic television images hid dire policy failures, JFK's being much worse than Reagan's. John F. Kennedy almost incinerated the world so as not to appear weak. John F. Kennedy ranked very low in regards to peace on the peace, prosperity, and liberty scale. Mishandled the Bay of Pigs. The Cuban Missile Crisis was by far the most significant event of JFK's presidency and maybe one of the most important events in human history to date. The world looked into the abyss of strategic thermonuclear destruction, and JFK did more to cause this confrontation than his Soviet adversaries. The only reason JFK is not ranked as the worst president in U.S. history in his assessment is because after his policies caused an atomic showdown, he realized the immense danger and rejected the hawkish options offered by his advisors, which clearly would have led to a nuclear war. One of those, which he gets credit for, is Operation Northwoods, which any conspiracy theorist is going to go, woo, woo, like alarm bells going off right now. Operation Northwoods, we love that. Yes, that was a plan that was proposed by a Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was proposed by a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and JFK actually gets credit. He gets credit for firing that member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and for never carrying out Operation Northwoods. So when you read Jesse Ventura's book about, lies the government told you or the conspiracy theories from Jesse Ventura, just remember, they never actually carried out Operation Northwoods, right? It was proposed by a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And it shows you just how, disgusting, the minds of many of these, people are. If Dr. Strangelove, not a documentary, right? Like JFK the movie, not a documentary, a film, a fiction film. But Dr. Strangelove does a good job of sort of showing the mindset of people during that time. And JFK was one of the worst of those people. And when he almost incinerated the entire world, he did make a good decision in turning around his policy. But of course, the origins of the Cuban Missile Crisis came in the form of the butchered invasion of the Bay of Pigs in 1961. This was a plan that the CIA concocted under another president who sucked, Eisenhower. Yes, great man. Thank you for saving us from Nazi Europe and from Japan, from Japanese imperialism, Mr. Eisenhower. But just like Thomas Jefferson, you were better when you were not president of the United States. So Eisenhower constructed this plan, and the young, inexperienced John F. Kennedy picked it up. JFK's advisors, many of them actually opposed the scheme. Allen Dulles, the CIA director, told him, though, it would be a military cakewalk. And was it a military cakewalk? The CIA, who said that the Bay of Pigs was going to be a military cakewalk. Come on, conspiracy theorists. They said that the Bay of Pigs was going to be was going to be this total cakewalk, no problem. Well, how did the Bay of Pigs actually go? It was more like a...
Oh, my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the f***, man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your goddamn ugly ass on.
Yeah. The CIA's plan was impossible from the beginning. How would a force of 1,500 Cuban exiles defeat a much larger Cuban opposition force, which JFK estimated in a whopping 25,000 Cubans they were going to have to fight? Yeah, they're going to fight. The CIA, led by Allen Dulles, proposes a plan to send 1,000 Cuban exiles against 25,000 hardened Cuban soldiers. But they totally could pull off a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy. Yeah.
Why are you gay?
Sorry, conspiracy theorists on that one there. Let's go. Continue on here. Before the invasion, JFK had warned the Cuban exiles he would not support them with U.S. airstrikes because he wanted the military action to seem like an internal uprising. Idiot. Although JFK was reluctant to let the exiles' Air Force support their outnumbered troops during the initial assault for fear of revealing U.S. involvement, he allowed their planes to bomb the Cuban Air Force on the ground before the assault, with the erroneous intelligence coming back that the exiles had destroyed 80% of Castro's aircraft. Idiots. But the CIA is genius and brilliant and managed to pull off a coup by having, through LBJ and Alan Foster Dulles, managed to kill John F. Kennedy, and no one has found out about it since then. Or we've all found out about it again since then. The CIA, the brilliant CIA, they're so fantastically amazing at planning things. Now, Castro, who of course had been given plenty of warning about the invasion, ordered an airstrike with his large remaining air force and amassed an overwhelmingly superior ground force to meet the attack. The CIA and the exiles had believed that if the exiles began to lose the fight, JFK would be forced to intervene with U.S. aircraft. He didn't, and he reprehensibly let the exiles die or be captured on the beach. The CIA erroneously assumed that the invasion of exiles would cause a massive uprising on the part of the Cuban people, overthrowing Castro and putting in a new government. This assumption flew in the face of reports beforehand by returning U.S. observers that Castro was popular in Cuba. As a result of the botched U.S. attempt at sponsoring an invasion, Castro was able to consolidate power. And in December of 1961, he declared himself to be a communist and allied with China and the Soviet Union. Even after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, the U.S. government made numerous attempts to assassinate Castro or sabotage his regime, Operation Mongoose. And guess what? The CIA screwed it up. Couldn't kill Castro, but somehow managed to pull off an amazing conspiracy to pull off JFK. Sorry, folks. Another big problem with the conspiracy theorist view of history is if they can do conspiracies for evil, why not conspiracies for good? Right? If the government is so brilliant at planning operations like the assassination of JFK, don't you think that they could easily coordinate nationalized, socialized medicine in this country? Don't think so. Government is inept. Government is broken. The CIA couldn't even handle the Bay of Pigs. So we've got more presidents who sucked when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Were you exposed to hazardous materials while serving in the military and have an illness or condition as a result?
If so, you may be eligible for VA benefits and services.
Whether you need health care or want to file a disability compensation claim related to military exposures, VA is here to help.
Visit va.gov/military-exposures to learn more and apply today.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet
Anytime you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? You can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas and a liberty New Year. Socialists and commies may try to convince you that the holiday's all about free stuff. But let's be honest, we all know whose wallet Santa's gifts are coming out of. There ain't no such thing as a free stocking. Santa is the only guy with a big white beard promising free stuff that we want anything to do with this holiday. And if you don't believe, you don't receive. It's a capitalist, consumerist holiday, and it's time for a Santa-sized stimulus. Get your free market merch at the AP for Liberty shop today and stuff your socialist sisters' stockings full of capitalist cheer. Ho, 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 ho!
Good morning, it's 7:54. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Don't forget, we got Judge Andrew Napolitano coming up at 8 a.m. this morning. We'll talk to him about which presidents sucked. He'll probably agree with me that they all sucked. We'll talk to him about that, as well as the latest Twitter files drop, the FBI's collusion with social media. We'll discuss. First off, though, I do want to finish the John F. Kennedy thing, just because I do think that he gets wildly overrated in people's minds because he died young and he had a lot of flowery words. But let's not forget, of course, his intervention in Southeast Asia and the Third World during the Cold War, which is important because in March of 1961, JFK clandestinely allowed U.S. combat aircraft to fight North Vietnamese planes over South Vietnam. A lot of people, they blame Richard Nixon for Vietnam. There's like, Richard Nixon in Vietnam and stuff like that. It's like, Richard Nixon ended the war in Vietnam. Richard Nixon presided over the completion, the end of the Vietnam War. John F. Kennedy was one of the people who instigated the war in Vietnam. Rather than committing U.S. land forces, JFK preferred diplomacy and economic aid to South Vietnam and the use of South Vietnam's forces, U.S. air and naval power, and a small U.S. ground force. When the press queried on JFK on whether U.S. ground forces were fighting in Vietnam, he lied and said no, he had not consulted Congress before dispatching the U.S. Special Forces and air power to Vietnam. Thus, JFK was fighting a secret, undeclared war in violation of the U.S. Constitution. JFK, Sucked. A couple more things real quick. And arguably his worst crime was that he was a Keynesian in regards to the PP&L scale, which is what we're ranking presidents on today. Peace, prosperity, and liberty. John F. Kennedy was a Keynesian, not good on economic prosperity. He believed that increased government spending expands aggregate demand and thus economic growth, meaning that he wants to inflate, typically, although he wanted to restrain inflation by 1964, which would have been his reelection year, and he wanted a tax cut, which was good, but he didn't want to cut government spending. He wanted to do what most presidents do, increase government spending and cut taxes in order to spur the economy on. And of course, what did that lead to? But nothing but more devaluation of our currency eventually. Kennedy thought that U.S. steel was the key to manufacturing, that higher steel prices could adversely affect the entire economy. He concentrated on holding down steel price increases, taking the government where it should not have gone, into negotiations between the steel companies and their unions. And then, of course, there was the Peace Corps, which is, recruiting inexperienced U.S. college students to help people on a small scale, which is an inefficient and wasteful way to help the poor of the developing world. It's basically just a way to subsidize middle-class college students to see the world. And even Eisenhower thought that JFK's moon landing stuff was just a stunt. You can text the show today at 573-319-1586. Good morning to Renegade Siha for following the channel. Thank you so much for joining us over on Twitch today. We're grateful to have you and all 35 of our listeners and followers over on YouTube this morning. We're grateful to have you as well. Randy texted in and said, hey, Austin, would love to hear more about the JFK conspiracy and most specifically reasons you believe the official story is true. Great show. Thank you, Randy. You texted in about 20 minutes ago about that one. I did go through that a little bit in the last segment. I guess I'll finish this off with JFK and the conclusions I made. I used to be a conspiracy theorist. When I first got into politics, I believed many of the big conspiracies, or at least I had questions about things like 9/11 and JFK. But eventually, once I ran into the skeptic community, I started to read things that disagreed with me. And I found that the official story was much more fascinating than the questions posed by the conspiracy theorists. The problem with the conspiracy theorist mindset, especially on JFK, but just in general, is that it always begs a question. So, like, for example, this morning, someone was tweeting at me saying things like, I might be able to just pull it up here real quickly, about Lyndon Johnson, LBJ, and like his motivations for wanting to have the CIA kill John F. Kennedy. Here we go. Here's a perfect example of like begging the question. Was likely. Here we go. Somebody says, people tend to forget LBJ was under investigation for corruption before JFK's assassination and was likely to be found guilty and impeached. Afterwards, the MSM decided to look away because they thought the country didn't need an impeachment so soon after the assassination. Boy, that's a lot of big assertions for which would require a mountain of evidence. But this is the key part here. He says LBJ was under investigation for corruption before JFK's assassination. He was likely to be found guilty and impeached. Was likely to is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, don't you think? Was likely to? How do you know that? How do you know that he was likely to be found guilty and impeached? Do you know how hard it is to impeach someone unless you're Donald Trump? It's very hard to impeach a sitting president, much less a vice president. Anyways, begging the question. We'll talk more about the JFK conspiracy stuff a little later on the show, Randy, which means you're going to have to stick around. I'm asking you a favor today to get a free informational packet from my friends over at Lear Capital. LEARAUSTIN. Make sure that you visit their website at learaustin.com. It's totally free. Costs you nothing. Just get more information about gold and silver from my friends at Lear Capital. LEARAUSTIN. Do that for me. I'm going to go get Judge Napolitano, and I'll be right back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
My name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Diddy's website. Now I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Dee Dee made Frenchie bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Dee Dee really likes it. Dee Dee said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake. Yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes. You like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchie Bullshit. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchie Bullshit blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every $1 we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Do you have any real-world experience?
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway.
I need help.
You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. It's 8:05. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. I almost missed coming into the segment here because my good buddy, Judge Napolitano, and I always have so much fun having conversations that I almost missed the transition. Judge Andrew Napolitano is the host of the Judging Freedom Show, and he's joining us right now. Hi, Judge. How you doing?
That's my fault that you almost missed the hard start.
Judge, I'd love to hear more about your book recommendations a little bit later on in this segment. First, I'd like to get to this big news, more on Twittergate. The Twitter Files Part 8 dropped, which showed that the platform directly assisted the U.S. military's influence operations. Twitter docs show that the social media giant directly assisted the U.S. military. What are your thoughts on this story, Judge?
Well, I think it's reprehensible, but it's not illegal and it's not unconstitutional. Twitter is a private company. It doesn't mean we can't criticize them. It doesn't mean we have to patronize them. It doesn't mean that what they do is always right. But it does mean that they can form alliances for whomever they want. Fox News can form an alliance with the Republican National Committee. Twitter can form an alliance with the Democratic National Committee. Now, I don't know, and we don't know if Twitter did this voluntarily or if there was some coercion. We also don't know what the quid pro quo was. Why would Twitter be doing the military's bidding? What did the military do for Twitter? Why is the military, the American military, involved in manipulating public opinion under Donald Trump of all people? I can't imagine that he knew about it. Who authorized this? Why is the government trying to, it's not a surprise, they've been doing this since the Revolutionary War, manipulate public opinion in order to support the military? All of these are perfectly legitimate questions to be asked. The bitter irony here is all of these misdeeds by Twitter, some of which may be actionable, meaning some of which may form the basis for litigation, will redound to the detriment of the current owner of Twitter. Because when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he bought it liability and all. He bought the consequences for whatever Jack Dorsey and his crew did. So Musk may very well be exposing his own assets to liability by exposing not what he did, but what his predecessor did. It's an odd twist on the law. I can't imagine that there's an indemnification in there that the former owners of Twitter, who are $14 billion richer, are now going to indemnify the current owners of Twitter. It's not the way it works. It works the other way around. So this is the beginning. This is the tip of an iceberg. Honestly, I disbelieved Musk and the New York Post, as I know those folks, when he said that there's much to be revealed here. There is a lot to be revealed. This is a big deal. We need to get to the bottom of it. Who in the military authorized this?
If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen, I'm speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's the host of the Judging Freedom podcast that you can download on any of your mobile devices. Highly recommend that you do so if you're sitting there chatting with us right now. You can also text the show at 573-319-1586. Now, Judge, in regards to how the U.S. military collaborates with Twitter, I mean, it's not illegal, it's not unconstitutional for them to do so voluntarily. But don't you suspect, Judge, that there was some coercion here, that some kind of implied threat? I mean, when the government does these kinds of things, it's sort of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I mean, not that leftists from San Francisco aren't likely to hop whenever the government asks them for anything, because we know how much the Democrats love government. But in reality, government's relationship with business is a little bit more pointy. I mean, it really is implied that there is the gun in the room is pointed at them, isn't it, Judge?
Well, it's dangerous, Austin. The government likes to use a carrot or a stick, or, and I can't think of a name for this, something between a carrot and a stick. So the government may very well say, we'll look the other way on this issue, which the DOJ has with you, if you'll help us now. Now, that's not a carrot and it's not a stick. Maybe it's more of a carrot than a stick. Maybe it's both. Because if they don't look the other way, then they apparently do have some beef with the company that they're trying to get involved with. But this is, I wrote a column about this just 3 weeks ago called Slouching Toward Fascism. This is creeping fascism. This is private ownership and government control. I mean, when the government can come into a company and control certain parts of it, that is as fascistic and dangerous and contrary to human freedom as the government taking over the entire company. It doesn't want to take over the entire company. It doesn't know how to run the entire company. It's too expensive for it to do so. Its bureaucrats would be scratching their heads. But certain particular areas that are of interest to the government, mainly how that company can affect public opinion, that the government wants to control. So the cause of action that Elon Musk may be liable for is exposing what the quid pro quo was, what the government said, how they got their nose, how the camel got its nose under the tent, so to speak. And I don't know what the answer is, Austin. But the more there is that symbiotic relationship between the government and the private entity, the more the First Amendment will be applied to the private entity, that First Amendment, which is supposed to be applied to the government. Does the First Amendment restrain the Defense Department? Of course it does. It restrains all government. Can the government get around the First Amendment by coercing a private entity to do what the government can't do, which is to evaluate speech on the basis of its content? Absolutely not. But somebody has to find that out. Somebody has to have the evidence, and somebody has to bring a lawsuit. And then you have to end up before a judge who really believes that the First Amendment means what it says, like I used to be.
Absolutely, Judge. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your mobile devices. Judge, the political ramifications of a lot of this, the fallout from this, has been to see a decided turn of many Republicans against the FBI. At least from my anecdotal experience, from what I see of conversations of many Trump supporters online, it's not uncommon to see people who, heretofore had been, big supporters of the Federal Bureau of Investigations, now calling for the abolishment of the agency, which, it would give people like you and me hope that perhaps there might be a change in the Republican Party in the policy in regards to the views of the FBI. But maybe it's just as I grow older, I grow more cynical, and I wonder if maybe that you don't feel the same way, that any possibility of change, that Republicans, if they were to take control of the government, full control of the government, would simply descend to the same partisan exercise as before, meaning that when the Republican Party were to eventually take control of the government, they would no longer want to abolish the FBI, because what they really want is just to control these agencies of government. I have a phrase that I like to trot out sometimes, Judge, that angers pretty much everyone except libertarians when I say that conservatives love local cops and hate federal cops. Liberals love federal cops and hate local cops. What kind of cops do libertarians love? I think you know the answer.
The answer to that would be private cops.
Great answer, Judge. Great answer. Great answer. But isn't that the case, though?
Yes. Well, your one-liner is not only funny, it's prescient, and it's true. And I agree 100% with what you just said about the Republicans. They just want an FBI that they can control. And by the way, the FBI knows more about the Republicans than the Republicans do about the FBI, which is one of the reasons the FBI budget and the NSA budget and the CIA budget and fill in the blank budget of entities in the government that engage in illegal, unconstitutional domestic surveillance, all those budgets keep increasing. So I don't hold any hope in Republicans abolishing the FBI, but I do agree that it should be abolished. It has become a domestic surveillance entity. It is not sanctioned at all under the Constitution. In Madison's framework, there were only two federal statutes, one prohibiting debasing the money supply and one prohibiting treason, and both are defined in the Constitution so that Congress couldn't expand the definitions. And Madison wanted, and the Constitution originally was written in order to promote, that all criminal behavior would be addressed by the states. And some states would be a little bit more aggressive, and some states would be less aggressive, and you can vote with your feet and live in an environment that you chose. But with a federal police department, the FBI, and now the DHS, which is 10 times the size of the FBI, we're stuck with this, and I don't see it changing without a serious revolution in government. All these growths in government came about with Republican help. My friend, somebody you like, and he admires your work and mine, Andy Biggs, the Republican congressman from Arizona, who's challenging Kevin McCarthy points out that Kevin McCarthy has, and this is not a blast Kevin McCarthy show, but leader of the Republicans in the House of Representatives, the presumptive new, and maybe not, Lord, Speaker of the House, voted for and supports every increase in government that has come down the pike since he's been in the Congress. The Thomas Masseys and Rand Pauls and sometimes Mike Lees are the exception to the Republican Party rather than the rule. They are not the people to rely on if you want to shrink the government. Ron Paul had a great piece at LouRockwell.com either earlier this week or late last week about why the FBI should be abolished. I couldn't agree with him more.
Judge, if you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of the Judging Freedom podcast. Now, Judge, it seems to me, in a basis of history, one of the best ways to get, a good history lesson is to read your books, which I highly recommend, especially Theodore and Woodrow, if you want to look at the history of American presidents and progressive policies. A terrific book that you can get in all fine bookstores as well as Amazon.com. Also, Dred Scott's Revenge, one of my favorites. The book that got me into Judge Napolitano was A Nation of Sheep, Lies the Government Told You. Definitely, if you want to start your libertarian journey, you can't go wrong with the Judge's books. But Judge, at all times, what I learned from your books and what I've learned from, being sort of your protege for a short time, and from my study of history is that at all times that sincere friends of liberty have always been very scarce, very rare. And that in looking and judging and analyzing even the presidents that we look at with admiration, for example, Thomas Jefferson this morning, when you analyze Thomas Jefferson's rhetoric, his rhetoric is quite libertarian. His policies not so much. Very much the same thing with Ronald Reagan as another example. As I'm going through this book this morning with my friends who are watching us online, I can find bones to pick with Calvin Coolidge and with Grover Cleveland, the most libertarian presidents that we might say. Is it the case, Judge, and this is something I've been wrestling with, is it the case that once you gain power, like a Thomas Jefferson or a Calvin Coolidge or Grover Cleveland, once you have given that amount of power, that the realities of power and of the limited capabilities of what a president really can do with their power, necessarily precludes one from advancing the kind of lofty rhetoric that people like Ronald Reagan or Thomas Jefferson or Calvin Coolidge had before they were presidents, and that once they are ensconced with that power, that they are corrupted by necessity of it, but also incapable of changing a system that is bigger than even they are. Judge, your thoughts on this?
Well, yes and no. I mean, for the most part, I agree with you. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely, Lord Acton. The government draws those who suffer from libido dominandi, as St. Thomas Aquinas said, the lust to dominate, whether it's to dominate the government or whether it's to dominate the people that the government governs. The Louisiana Purchase, for example, Napoleon needed cash. Jefferson had the cash, and he just decided to buy what is now 1/3 of the United States. Totally unconstitutional. Absolutely no basis for it whatsoever, whether done by treaty, which is how it was done, or by any other means. It's sad because I love Jefferson so much, but when you dig deep, you do see things that we would condemn today. It really takes an almost saint-like person or a person totally devoted to the primacy of the individual over the state, like Ron Paul, to eschew, to shy away from, to reject the levers of power that are available to you once you do get elected. I often wonder how I would have reacted when tempted by those levels of power. My libertarian friends used to chide me, well, you worked for the government for 8 years. Well, I didn't. The government paid my salary, but I worked for the Constitution. And the same government that paid my salary often hated me because of my interpretations of the Constitution. Would I have interpreted the Constitution the same way if I had been in the executive branch? I like to think yes, but power is such an aphrodisiac. that it can tempt and seduce and control even people like Thomas Jefferson. Reagan, I think, was just a big-hearted, basically Western libertarian who surrounded himself with Bushies, and as in George H.W., and let those people run the government, and only got involved when they went to extremes. I hate to say that, but
No, it's such a shame
true,
because
and
it is
it's an
true.
inescapable truism.
It is, Judge, and it's a shame because I do think that his rhetoric was probably the most libertarian since Thomas Jefferson, but his behavior and practice and the expansion of government was another. But he was faced with the Soviet Union, with communism, and with those threats. So one wonders if making in collapsing communism in such a way was the right move. But then you're faced with the reality of, well, if communism fails on its own as an economic system, as we believe, then it wasn't necessary to spend so much because communism would have collapsed on its own accords. So we're caught in all these sort of twisting contradictions, Judge. And like you, I feel the same way. I don't know how I would react if I were placed into that scenario. I'd like to believe that I would do the right thing. But if the truism is true that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, then I can't hold myself up as a demigod or a god. I'm not. I'm a human, and I'm prone to the same temptations as everyone else.
Let me throw out my two favorite one-liners from Reagan. One he said and one he didn't say. So the one he said that everybody knows is the 9 most dangerous words in the English language are, "Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you." But my favorite really is from his first inaugural address when he said, "Let me remind you that the states formed the federal government and not the other way around." Now, here's what he didn't say, and what I would have begged him to say if I'd been the scrivener. I would have said, "And the powers that the states gave to the federal government, they can take back." He didn't say it. Would have been the perfect time for him to have inserted that in his inaugural address. He didn't call me. He didn't ask me. I didn't know he was going to say it, so I was too late to the game.
Judge, were you briefly considered for the Supreme Court by President Trump?
Twice. No, I'm talking about Reagan in the inaugural, but yes, twice by President Trump for the seat that went to Neil Gorsuch, whom I recommended to the president, and for the seat that went to Brett Kavanaugh.
Do you think that the reason why he ultimately didn't pick you is because you would not be as compliant?
I think he was surrounded by people who thought a sitting federal judge would be easier to confirm, and that they'd be confronted with my 14,000 appearances on Fox that they'd have to defend. some of which were fomented by the host of this show.
Well, I do apologize. I guess I can't really apologize, Judge. It was the 2 most miraculous, wonderful years of my life, and to
Same
see
here.
to see you out there, doing segments and interviews that I had helped produce and had a hand in producing. Of course, there was a larger team. It wasn't just me. But to see you out there fighting for freedom in those 2 years during the rise of the Tea Party tidal wave, getting people like Sarah Palin to go out on national television and support Congressman Ron Paul's Audit the Fed bill, bringing together what I believe was the best opportunity for liberty in the modern age with the Tea Party, and you being at the head of it in the zenith, and me just being a sort of footnote to it, being a small footnote of it. It was a great honor, Judge. And
It was. I remember when the Occupy Wall Street was going on, and you and one of the other producers went down to Occupy Wall Street and found 2 progressives down there that were really libertarians. And I don't think they had slept or showered or shaved in a week, and we put them on air anyway.
Zuccotti Park. I do remember it. Yes. We brought all of our libertarian friends down there and dropped off. And they had an anarchist bookstore, and we dropped off book copies of Murray Rothbard's.
Those were great days.
They were, Judge. But hopefully there are great days ahead of us. I mean, there are still opportunities to be had. Dark times right now, but usually it's darkest just before dawn. I think the Christmas season, Judge, is a time for us not only to reflect back on the year, but, in the season of lights, it's, also a season of miracles. And, I believe, Judge, that the possibility for hope and redemption exists. And I believe that you do too.
Yes.
In your recent column where you wrote about the miracle of Christmas, hope and redemption and salvation comes through Jesus Christ. Would you like to share that with us?
If you believe that Jesus Christ is true God and true man, then and as God could do anything, could have slain his tormentors by an act of will, then the greatest act of rejecting the levers of power, to go back to where we were before, is Christ on the cross. That is the greatest act of humility in the history of the world, the creator of the world allowing his creatures to execute him in order to demonstrate the depth of his love. Of course, this all comes about by the miracle of the virgin birth, which we celebrate on Sunday. God coming into the Blessed Virgin Mary to produce his son as a human being. My column this week is called What If Christmas is Real? It's one of those what if, in which I bring the reader into the basic Christianity and then say, well, what about all these people that think that the government is God? And when they think the government is God, what does it do? It destroys free will. And it makes us subservient to the government because we're afraid to challenge the government because then it'll take away the goodies that it's giving us. So I couldn't resist that. Some of my traditional Catholic friends might not like that, but I couldn't resist poking my elbow into the ribs of the government on Christmas.
Judge, you're a good friend. You're an inspiration and someone who I will admire endlessly until the end of my days. I just want to say to you, Merry Christmas, and I love you, friend. Thank you for your time today.
All right, Merry Christmas to you. I love you as well, Austin, and Merry Christmas to you and your beautiful bride. I hope you guys have a fabulous, fabulous holiday weekend.
Thank you very much, Judge. Have a wonderful and Merry Christmas. Take care.
Thank you.
Good stuff. What do you think? Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of the Judging Freedom podcast. Download his podcast on any of your mobile devices. And do me a favor today. All I ask is for one little Christmas gift from you. Totally free, won't cost you a thing. Visit my friends over at Lear Capital. Sign up for a free informational packet at learaustin.com. If you loved that interview with the judge, you can help me out and say thank you by visiting learaustin.com. Give them your information. They'll send you an info packet about their gold and silver packages. No obligation to buy. Just get more information. Maybe in the future you might say to yourself, hey, listen, I'd like to put a little bit of my money into gold. You could do that. Visit learaustin.com, get their free information packet. Do that as a favor to me if you liked that interview with the judge. And we'll be back with more about why your favorite presidents sucked when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamerica.show.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you?
I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Hey, it's Austin. Thanks for watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. 2022 has been an exciting year for the Petersen household. Steffi and I celebrated our first anniversary, and my new radio program, The Austin Petersen Show, was syndicated in St. Louis just over a month ago. There have been some challenging times, but with the help and support of good friends like you, we've been able to come out even stronger at the end of this year than when we started. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the Cantina crew, especially Camelia Petersen, Tolly Owens, Jamie Marie Pope, Chris Morrill, Matt Unruh, Quest Fanning, Elizabeth Fanning Press, Tina Martin Goodrick, John Rail, Jasper Logan, Kathy Jo Loy, Edie Vogel, Grant Sundberg, Anna DePalm, Doug Hill, Andy Opperman, Lyle and Lori Rosberg, John Petersen, John Mashurik, Ava Lavasco, Leslie Scott Russell, Liberty Liss, Pam Ames, Cecilia Harden, Mary Kramer, and dozens more than I could list here. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and may your days be merry and bright with a Happy New Year.
Hello, I'm George. Thank you for watching the Wake Up America show with my dad. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 reasons why you should visit Dad's online store at apforlibertyshop.com. Number 1, you can get exclusive freedom-loving merch designed by AP himself, or me mum, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well, and blimey, they are great! Number 2, most of these products are so wicked that they aren't even allowed to be advertised on Facebook or Instagram. Modern machine guns and a proper keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3, you're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell, this commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning. Merry Christmas. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. What do you think of the show so far? It's been pretty good, I think, wouldn't you say? Hope you enjoyed that interview with Judge Ann Napolitano. We're having a great show today where we're talking about why your favorite presidents suck. So we've gone through presidents like Thomas Jefferson. We've talked about John F. Kennedy. We've talked about, oh, goodness gracious, who else do we have? We haven't had George Washington, man. We've talked about Teddy Roosevelt. But why don't we talk about some of the presidents that were actually what are ranked in this book, which is called Recarving Rushmore by Ivan Eland. You see it right there. See how to spell his name. Let's see. There we go. E-L-A-N-D. Recarving Rushmore. There you go. You can see it right there. That's what I'm reading from today. And he ranks presidents based on a peace, prosperity, and liberty scale. I also had a backup book today that I never got to, which is Crazy That President Said. I'm hoping to get to that in another show, to make another episode. Crazy That President Said. We'll get to that book as well. But if you like me reading from books, then today's your show. If you don't like dusty old good smelling books, then today is not your show. I hope that you will join us another time, though. And Grover Cleveland is ranked as number 2, second best president in American history in regards to peace, prosperity, and liberty. That's how we're judging our presidents today. Grover Cleveland, ranked number 2, as one of the few scrupulously honest presidents. In the campaign of 1884, leading to his first term, he was a bachelor. He was accused of producing a child out of wedlock. Haunted by the mocking slogan, "Ma, Ma, where's my pa? Gone to the White House. Ha, ha, ha." Cleveland did an unheard of thing. He admitted the story was true, but that he had conscientiously met the obligations of parenthood. But Cleveland's honesty is not why he's ranked as number 2 in this ranking. Honesty is to be admired, but as will become apparent later, many presidential policies are worse than being dishonest or tolerating petty corruption in an administration. Cleveland was an ardent proponent of limited and devolved government. He believed the president should be a referee who ensured that nobody was shorn of their rights or granted special privileges. That is, the president should do just what the Constitution had envisioned and nothing more. He believed, as the founders had, that the president was an executor of the laws passed by Congress rather than a legislator. Addressing a treaty for a presidential initiative, Cleveland once said, "I did not come here to legislate." He also conducted a largely restrained foreign policy in spite of his efforts to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. In some ways, Cleveland strengthened the presidency vis-a-vis Congress. For example, he resisted attempts by Congress to seize executive branch documents. Congress feared that a Democratic president would remove Republicans from patronage positions in the U.S. Post Office without Senate approval, as required by the Tenure of Office Act, which was later ruled unconstitutional and repealed. Cleveland was ultimately proved correct about his right to fire political appointees, yet his equivalent to the modern-day claim of executive privilege to withhold information from Congress was not in the Constitution. Also, Cleveland admirably vetoed more bills, mostly legislation that benefited special interests, at the expense of the general taxpayers than all previous presidents combined. After Cleveland's vice president died, Cleveland urged that something be done to cover this eventuality, and Congress passed the Presidential Succession Act to deal with the problem. In regards to peace, he practiced a restrained foreign policy. He courageously withdrew and squelched the treaty that annexed Hawaii, which his predecessor, Benjamin Harris, had sent to the Senate for ratification. He did build up the Navy to enforce the Monroe Doctrine, which would be not a limited government thing, correct? And he advocated for a hard money policy. Prosperity ranking gives him nice and high. Let's give a hard money policy for Grover Cleveland. That's good stuff. Cleveland was opposed to the Bland-Allison Act, which compelled the government to buy and coin all the silver that could be dug up, thus increasing the money supply. Cleveland believed the executive branch should have limited power and did not actively pursue alternative legislation. He chose not to violate the constitutional separation of powers or meddle in congressional debates, but he asserted his right to veto any bill that he opposed, as it should have been. So, hard money policy, restrained executive branch, good stuff. We like him. He also advocated tariff reductions and spending restraint. Yeah. He tried to spur economic expansion by cutting tariffs, which he thought were a tax on the common folk. Yes. Amazing. Donald Trump fans right now being like,
"No, God! No, God, please, no!
They're not liking them Grover Cleveland today. He also opposed welfare. He saw no constitutional basis for welfare and famously said, "Though the people support the government should not support the people." Oh boy, can you imagine saying that today? People would be like, "Government should support the people." Although he vetoed a relief bill for Texas farmers affected by drought, he saw subsidized the Department of Agriculture research, along with dissemination of such information as within the General Welfare Clause of the Constitution's preamble. When the founders stated that the Constitution should promote the general welfare, they didn't mean giving out subsidies or creating welfare programs for specific groups. For example, most of them didn't believe the Constitution permitted federal subsidies for building roads and canals. Roads. Oh, God, not Rhodes.
Oh, God!
Not Rhodes.
God, please, no! No!
One of the things that Grover Cleveland did that made him suck, because every president sucked in some way or another, is that he enlarged the bureaucracy. He raised the Department of Agriculture to cabinet rank in 1889 and created the Department of Labor in 1888. Both of these agencies became unwieldy bureaucracies that advocated for and aided special interests. He also advocated heavy-handed policies. He promoted heavy-handed policies towards labor and benevolent policies for Indians, but not African Americans. Late 1800s, still not good to be a black man in the United States. What else have we got on the show today? We've got what about the greatest president in libertarian terms? Can we say should we talk about what's his name? Let's pull him up here on the screen. No, of course we all know Woodrow Wilson was the worst president in US history, but there was another president whose name on the lips falls trippingly on the tongue. On many libertarians is ranking right up there. Let's pull him up on the screen here. Take a look. Here we are. Yes, number 3. There we go. You know who it's going to be. We're going to talk about him next. Oh, you can't wait, can you? If you're listening to the podcast later, you're like, who is it? Who is it? Is it who I think it is? Is it who I think it is? Oh, yes. It's the man, Calvin Coolidge. What ranking did he get on this list? It's lower than Grover Cleveland. It's Calvin Coolidge sucked. All Christmas sucked. Talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Were you exposed to hazardous materials while serving in the military and have an illness or condition as a result?
If so, you may be eligible for VA benefits and services.
Whether you need health care or want to file a disability compensation claim related to military exposures, VA is here to help.
Visit va.gov/military-exposures to learn more and apply today.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have have more control of my own destiny.
If I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors, what would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas. We wish you a freedom Christmas and a liberty New Year. Socialists and commies may try to convince you that the holiday's all about free stuff. But let's be honest, we all know whose wallet Santa's gifts are coming out of. There ain't no such thing as a free stocking. Santa is the only guy with a big white beard promising free stuff that we want anything to do with this holiday. And if you don't believe, you don't receive. It's a capitalist, consumerist holiday, and it's time for a Santa-sized stimulus. Get your free market merch at the AP for Liberty shop today and stuff your socialist sisters' stockings full of capitalist cheer. Ho, 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 ho!
Morning. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Nice to see you, R-Volt24, Quest Fanning, Rare Camellia, Avatar, Mike Phantom, and I, YR, Stephen Wolf. Nice to see everybody here. Chris Morrill. How's everybody doing today? 36 people watching over on YouTube. I'd love to see that. Nice to see so many people up here. Thanks for sticking around through the commercials. I noticed that the numbers remain pretty steady throughout the commercials, which I appreciate. Gives me a little bit of time to rest my voice. Also gives me time to get a guest in studio or do things like that. Get yourself ready for a little bit of magic. Al Johnson, Quest Fanning. R-Volt says, can we start over? Yeah, sure, why not? Another 2 hours? What do you say? You want to do another 2 hours? After this, I immediately start producing my afternoon radio shows, so it's going to be a little tough for me to do something like that. All right, so we're talking today about why your favorite president sucked. My favorite president, Calvin Coolidge, ranked on the peace, prosperity, and liberty scale. Can you take a guess about where he ranked? I mean, Grover Cleveland was number 2, so that must mean Calvin Coolidge is number 1, right? Actually, no. Calvin Coolidge was number 10. He was a good president, but he was not a great president. He was definitely a good one. I named my dog after him, but it's a dog named after him, not a child. Calvin Coolidge once said that the United States had an excessive number of laws. Hey, hell yeah. He said we would be better off if we didn't have any more. Be better off if we didn't have any more. Oh my God, yes. I love it. The greatest duty and opportunity of government is not to embark on any new adventures. Oh, that's some Ronald Reagan rhetoric there. But like so many presidents advocating limited government, and Coolidge didn't always quite measure up to his own rhetoric. He was less a supporter of limited government than Warren Harding. What? Harding died after 2 scandal-plagued years in office, and Coolidge succeeded him. As a result, Harding is remembered less fondly among modern-day Republicans than his silent cow. I can hear so many libertarians out there right now who are watching this who are like,
how dare you?
Well, just understand here, we're ranking them based on peace, prosperity, and liberty, and Silent Cal, well, he was number 10, right? You don't even know who number 1 is, do you, on this list? Well, I'll get to number 1 in a little bit. Who do you think is, take a guess, drop a comment, and tell me, who do you think over in the chat, tell me, who do you think was the number 1 president ranked according to peace, prosperity, and liberty? I want to hear your thoughts. Who do you think was the number 1 president in regards to peace, prosperity, and liberty? Take a guess over there. Oh, also, the judge just sent me a message. He says, your beautiful words at the end of our segment gave me goosebumps, and I forgot to promote Judging Freedom for tomorrow. perhaps you can do so for me. Absolutely, Judge. Thursday, December 22nd at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time, Alex Jones will be on with Judge Napolitano. Ooh. It's a big guest. If you're an Alex Jones fan, he's going to be on with Judge Napolitano on Judging Freedom tomorrow. Make sure that you do that. I just sent the judge. Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you all. Thanks so much. 44 people over on YouTube. I better get to the segment here. Calvin Coolidge. Why was he number 10 ranking in terms of the best presidents according to Peace, Prosperity, and Liberty? He endorsed foreign policy fiascos. Yeah, not so great. At the end of World War I, Germany owed $2.5 billion in reparations to France and Britain, who in turn owed $2.5 billion to the United States. The Germans couldn't pay, and because of the high U.S. tariffs that Coolidge supported, yes, Coolidge was a tariff supporter. And because of the tariffs, France and Britain didn't have the surplus dollars from exports to pay the United States. That's another problem that you have with tariffs. Coolidge was unwilling to cancel the Allies' debts or reduce the tariffs. So the United States had to loan $2.5 billion to Germany to cover reparations to Europe and to France and Britain, which then paid $2.5 billion to the United States. So essentially loaned $2.5 billion to France and Britain so that they could pay us $2.5 billion.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the f***, man? Get your ass on, boy. Get your goddamn ugly ass on.
So what did that result in? Well, thus, all it did was it transferred money from the average taxpayer to the U.S. elites. Also, Coolidge endorsed the United States' dubious entry into the Permanent Court of International Justice. International Court?
Why are you gay?
Calvin, what the hell? International Court's my ass. The United States was blocked from entering, however, because the League of Nations objected to U.S. reservations about the Versailles Treaty. The outcome was actually favorable because international courts, even today, rarely have the procedural safeguards that U.S. citizens who might come before them enjoy in their domestic judicial system. Our domestic judicial system, far better that Americans appear in American courts than in international courts. Am I right? Am I right?
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Ryu. He exercised military restraint, however. Following Woodrow Wilson's numerous military inventions, Coolidge continued Harding's policies of military restraint in Latin America. He helped bring U.S. forces home and, like Harding, stayed out of unneeded foreign wars. He practiced fiscal restraint, though he was pro-business. And whenever a politician is pro-business, that usually means that they mean like helping business with government, right? He deserves a lot of credit for vetoing Republican Congress's attempt to spend the budget surplus on untested programs and pork barrel projects, for example, from farm price supports. He instead reduced the federal budget, debt, and taxes on gifts, and for the non-rich. He also relaxed regulations on business, which is a good thing. Give him a little credit there. Calvin Coolidge. Okay, and he pursued unnecessary monetary expansion. Helped to cause the Great Depression. Yes, he did. Calvin Coolidge continued fiscal austerity. The U.S. economy continued its prosperity during Coolidge's 1.5 terms. But at the end of the decade, when the U.S. stock market was hyperactive, Coolidge correctly believed that New York, not the federal government, should regulate the New York Stock Exchange. Much of the excessive speculation in the market was driven by excessive brokers' loans to investors. The underlying problem, however, was the government's excessive expansion of the money supply, and it caused the Great Depression. The government's expansion of credit to business, that is the money supply, during Coolidge's and Harding's terms resulted from Woodrow Wilson creating the Federal Reserve System in 1913. Excess money usually causes business to miscalculate and overinvest in long-term projects. Freaking duh. God's sakes, how hard is this concept? When consumers eventually get the money, however, they will consume as they always did, keeping their consumption to savings ratios constant. In other words, even though savings, which is the supply of capital, has increased, investment, the demand for capital, has increased more. Because savings provide the funds for business investment, there will be insufficient savings for such investment, so some long-term projects of business will have to be canceled and liquidated. The state of affairs is usually called a recession or a depression. We would know about that, wouldn't we? The money supply increased 61% from mid-1921 to mid-1929. He pursued a lot of that monetary expansion. So Coolidge should bear some of the blame for causing the largest economic disaster in U.S. history. Yet from the stock market crash in 1929, the first year of Hoover's presidency, until 1931, the downturn was merely a typical recession, less severe than the recession of 1921. Had Hoover and Franklin Roosevelt allowed market forces to restore prosperity, the downturn might have been shorter and less serious. Thus, Coolidge should get blamed for causing the economic downturn, while Hoover and FDR should be held culpable for not allowing recovery and even exacerbating the situation into the Great Depression. Okay, so who's number one on this list? All right, as we go into the final ones, who is number one on this list? If you had to guess, let's see here. James Madison was a guess. Somebody said George Washington, Ronald Reagan. Let's see. Oh, nobody got it yet. Let's see. You have 5 minutes to get through this list, brah. I know. I've got 3 minutes to get through this list. The number one on the PP&L ranking of the most libertarian president in American history was, I wish I had a drum roll queued up for you, but I don't, so I'll just have to do this. Can you guess? John Tyler. What? John Tyler, number one, rated excellent. Well, war hero William Henry Harrison was elected president in 1941 under the Whig Party banner and died in office after serving only 1 month. The shortest term as president in U.S. history. So actually, you know what? They didn't rank William Henry Harrison in this list because he died after a month in office. But you know what? I'm going to rank him as number one. I'm going to put John Tyler as number two. If you want to find out more about John Tyler, I highly suggest this book, which is called Recarving Rushmore. For those of you who want to know where George Washington was on the list, you should read the book, but they weren't so kind to George Washington. George Washington was ranked as, I'll tell you, number seventh best president in terms of liberty here. A precedent-setting presidency, both good and bad, mishandled domestic incidents, determined foreign policy. He did set precedents limiting presidential powers, which is good. But unfortunately, he was not number one. He was number 7, and John Adams was number 22. John Tyler was number 1, and we don't have time to go into all the reasons why. This is the last live show before Christmas. Tomorrow you get a replay, best of, which means that I know a lot of you aren't going to come back, which makes me sad, because I do hang out in the chat. I'm just in my boxers hanging out, chatting with you while I'm laying in bed tomorrow, because I'm taking a couple days off because I need a break. Okay? Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Do you want to help me out? Do me a favor. Give me a Christmas present. It doesn't cost you a dime. Head over to learaustin.com and get a free informational packet from my friends over at Lear Capital. Do it for me, will you please? Just as a favor. You don't have to buy gold and silver, although it would be a good idea. But just get more information. Find out a little bit more about it. Go to learaustin.com right now. The show's over. Type it into your browser, LEARAUSTIN, and give me a Christmas present by just signing up for an informational packet from them. Make my sponsor happy. Support the show. learaustin.com. I recommend you buy gold and silver. You should. But it's free to sign up for more information. learaustin.com. Merry Christmas. Get you some silver and gold from my friends at Lear Capital. And we'll see you the day after Christmas, Monday? Yeah, that Monday. I'll be back then. Thank you so much for all your friendship. Glad tidings of comfort and joy, for unto us the Savior is born. Have a wonderful day. Love you very much. And I'll miss you guys. But I'll be back tomorrow. Just tune in, watch a replay. I'm going to cut the best of. Play it tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
When I was just a boy, Christmas brought so much joy.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.